The 29th African Union Heads of State Assembly has begun in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa. Monday's meeting began with a closed session in which Rwandan President Paul Kagame delivered his report to the Assembly on the AU reform plan and implementation roadmap. The high-level summit is expected to last 2 days and will also address issues related to peace, security, migration and youth empowerment on the continent. Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a message of congratulations expressing his hopes that the AU will lead African countries to peace and prosperity. Let's go to Addis Ababa for an update on the 29th AU Summit. We're joined by CGTN's Beatrice Marshall. Beatrice, there has been a significant development towards reforming the African Union. What more can you tell us?
Yes, indeed, Penina, the long-awaited report by Rwandan President Paul Kagame on reforming the African Union has been endorsed by heads of state here at the African Union Summit. And of course, also the focus here has been on peace and security issues in Africa. The focus has been on Somalia, the situation in South Sudan, the Sahel region, and the Lake Chad Basin. Another issue in focus here has been harnessing the demographic dividend for investing in the youth, which is the key theme for the African Union Summit. And part of that included endorsing a youth fund. Now, the youth are looking for about $200 million here towards funding youth projects across the continent. Well, let's find more and let's get another analysis, though, on a self-sustaining African Union. And I'm joined by Dr. Carlos Lopez here. He's a former executive secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. That report, Dr. Lopez, of course, that report endorsed by heads of states and government here on reforming the African Union. Give us a preview, though, of the process that went into formulating that report.
Well, the discussions really started in 2015 when the principle of having autonomy in the funding of the AU was endorsed by the heads of state. And then, a successive number of meetings sharpened this focus, and eventually in January this year, a reform proposal was tabled by President Kagame and his team. It was endorsed in principle, and now we have the roadmap, the details that have been now also confirmed.
Those details and the roadmap that have been confirmed, what do they entail?
Well, the gist of it is basically making sure that the AU is funded by the Africans at the current rate. We will not be able to have the policy space that we require. So it is very important that we fund our organization. And I think all member states really realize that. Another very important development is to make sure that the meetings are more efficient at the summit level, but also that they are more focused. So the number of areas of coverage should diminish. There's a call for a better structure between the division of labor that exists in the African Union and within the various economic communities, and also the establishment of an Africa Development Agency, which will replace the NEPAD, which was the mechanism until now that was used for partnership building, but also for execution of programs of the African Union.
What will be the process of implementation here? Because I think the whole issue of financing the African Union by Africa was first mentioned last year. So what will be the process of implementation here?
Well, on the funding particularly, it's very tricky because what is being proposed is a 0.2% tax on all imports in Africa that are eligible, which means that apply to certain types of imports, not all of them. It is enough to fund all the activities of the African Union from an administrative point of view, about 75% of its programs, about 25% of its peace building, which is what the principles call for. I think 10 countries have already announced they are ready to move on. Another 12 are more or less at the stage where they can confirm they are prepared to introduce this tax. But we know this has to be done country by country because it's a national arrangement from a legal point of view.
Right. So for the continent, though, for the common African, at the end of the implementation process, what can be expected? What will Africa see?
Well, we have actually not just concentrated on managerial aspects, political aspects, but also the citizenry dimensions. Like, for instance, the call for an African passport is one of them. The call to have quotas for youth and women is another one. The call for private sector and civil society to be involved in most of the programs is also there. So there is really a typology of situations that is being proposed by this reform package that will enhance the collaboration that exists between various Pan-African institutions, but will also go beyond that, trying to reach the citizens.
All right, Dr. Carlos Lopez, thank you very much for your insights on the reform process. And of course, the summit concludes tomorrow. It will be a two-day summit here. But Robert Nagila has been following the day's proceedings and tells us more on what we can expect as the highlights for tomorrow's summit. Robert?
Well, Beatrice, one of the key highlights on Tuesday is going to be a press briefing by the Peace and Security Commission. Now, we expect them to touch on the conflicts within certain regions within the African continent, the Sahel, the Lake Chad Basin, where Boko Haram continues to be a menace, and the AU mission in Somalia. Now, there had been talk on Monday of a rerouting of troops, an exit strategy, but it does appear that no firm agreement has been reached as yet. That press briefing was supposed to have been Monday afternoon, but it's now been pushed to Tuesday. So we'll bring you more details as soon as we get more from that briefing itself. However, on Tuesday morning, there will be a meeting of the First Ladies on HIV/AIDS, and followed by the closing ceremony. We expect that to be around midday into the afternoon, followed by the final communique from the African Union. This will probably be a declaration, what has been agreed on, or a way forward on some of the discussions that took place here on the AU reforms, for example, AU financing, and other issues that arise from the Peace and Security Commission. Beatrice?
Right, Robert Nagila will be following all the events for you from here at the African Union headquarters. And of course, Penina, top of the agenda here is the theme about investing in Africa's youth. But on the sidelines, of course, the focus still remains very much on issues of peace and security. Penina?
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Beatrice Marshall live for us in Addis Ababa.